Maria had always been a daddy's girl. From the time she was little, her father, James, was more than just a parent. He was her hero, her teacher, and her biggest supporter. He wasn't perfect. He had his quirks, like humming old songs while fixing things around the house or forgetting birthdays until the very last minute. But to Maria, he was everything. He taught her how to ride a bike when she was 5, patiently running behind her as she wobbled down the street. When she fell and scraped her knees, he would pick her up, dust her off, and say with a smile, "That's how you learn, kiddo." As Maria grew older, James continued to play an important role in her life. He encouraged her love for drawing, often sitting beside her at the kitchen table while she sketched pictures of their family dog or scenes from her favorite cartoons. On weekends, they would go on long walks together through the park near their home, talking about school, dreams, and sometimes nothing at all. Those quiet moments meant the world to Maria. She felt safe and loved whenever she was with him. But life has a way of throwing unexpected challenges our way. One evening, when Maria was 23 years old, her phone rang late at night. It was her mother, her voice trembling as she spoke. "There's been an accident," she said, choking back tears. "It's your father." Maria froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She listened numbly as her mother explained that James had suffered a sudden heart attack while driving home from work. His car had skidded off the wet road, crashing into a tree. By the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. The days that followed were a blur of shock and grief. Maria couldn't believe her father was gone. Just 2 days ago, they had laughed, over dinner, talking about her plans to become an illustrator. Now she found herself standing in a funeral home, choosing a suit for him to wear in his coffin. Every decision felt heavy, every detail a reminder of the gaping hole his absence left in her life. Friends and family tried to comfort her, but no words could ease the pain of losing someone so dear. Preparing for the funeral was exhausting. Maria spent hours going through photo albums, selecting pictures to display at the service. Each image brought back memories: her father teaching her to swim, cheering at her high school graduation, dancing awkwardly at her cousin's wedding. As she arranged the photos on a table, she realized how much of her life revolved around him. He had shaped who she was, and now she had to figure out how to move forward without him. On the morning of the funeral, Maria woke up feeling hollow. The sky outside was gray, matching the weight in her heart. She dressed slowly, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, and dark circles hung beneath them. Despite the sadness pressing down on her, she knew she had to be strong today, for her mother, for her siblings, and most importantly, for her father. This was her chance to say goodbye. When she arrived at the chapel, the room was already filling up with people. Relatives, friends, co-workers, all gathered to pay their respects. The air smelled faintly of flowers, and soft music played in the background. Maria walked to the front of the room where the coffin stood, draped with white lilies. For a moment she hesitated, unsure if she was ready to face what lay inside. But then she took a deep breath and stepped closer. The sight of her father lying there, peaceful yet lifeless, hit her like a wave. Tears streamed down her face as she reached out to touch his hand. It was cold, stiff, and unfamiliar. This couldn't be real, she thought. How could the man who once held her close and made her laugh now feel so distant? Overwhelmed by emotion, Maria leaned forward and wrapped her arms around him, hugging him tightly. She whispered into his ear, "I love you, Dad. Thank you for everything." For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. The noise of the room faded away, leaving only the sound of her own heartbeat. And then something happened. Something Maria couldn't explain. A warmth spread through her arms, as though her father was responding to her embrace. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, a trick of her mind desperate to hold on to him. But then she felt it again, a faint movement beneath her fingertips. Her father's fingers twitched ever so slightly, as if trying to return her hug. Maria pulled back, startled. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at his hand, half expecting it to move again. Nothing happened. The room remained silent. everyone else oblivious to what she had just experienced. Was she losing her mind? Had grief driven her to hallucinate? Shaking, she reached out once more and gently held his hand. This time, there was no mistaking it. The slightest pressure, a weak but undeniable squeeze. It was as if her father was saying goodbye one final time. Maria's mind raced. What did this mean? Was it a miracle, a sign, or simply a reflex of the body letting go? She didn't know, and perhaps she never would. All she knew was that in that moment, she felt closer to her father than she had since his passing. Whatever it was, it gave her a strange sense of peace, a reassurance that even though he was gone, his love for her remained. As she stepped away from the coffin, wiping her tears, Maria glanced around the room. No one else seemed to notice anything unusual. Everyone was lost in their own thoughts, mourning in their own ways. But Maria carried something different with her now, a memory of connection, however fleeting, that would stay with her forever. Little did she know, this extraordinary moment would change her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The day of the funeral arrived, and Maria woke up feeling like she hadn't slept at all. Her body was heavy with exhaustion, but her mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. She stared at the ceiling, trying to gather the strength to face the day. The thought of seeing her father lying in the coffin made her stomach churn. How could she say goodbye to someone who had been such a big part of her life? But deep down she knew she had to be there, for her family, for herself, and most importantly for her father. After dragging herself out of bed, Maria got dressed slowly. She chose a simple black dress, the one her mother had suggested. As she stood in front of the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her eyes were swollen from crying and her face looked pale. She tried to fix her hair, but it felt pointless. No amount of effort could make her look or feel any better. Still, she reminded herself that this wasn't about appearances. It was about honoring her father's memory. When she arrived at the chapel, the scene outside was somber. Cars lined the parking lot, and groups of people stood huddled together, talking in low voices. Some nodded solemnly as Maria walked past, offering quiet condolences. She forced a small smile in return, though it didn't reach her eyes. Inside, the room was filled with flowers, roses, lilies, and daisies, all arranged neatly around the space. Their sweet scent lingered in the air, almost masking the heaviness of the occasion. Maria took a seat near the front, close to where the coffin rested. Her mother sat beside her, clutching a tissue tightly in her hand. Her siblings were scattered around the room, some crying softly, others sitting quietly with blank expressions. Maria glanced at them, feeling a pang of guilt. Was she supposed to comfort them? Or should she focus on her own grief? She wasn't sure. All she knew was that this day felt surreal, like she was watching everything unfold from a distance. As the service began, a pastor stepped up to speak. His words were kind and heartfelt, but Maria found it hard to concentrate. Her thoughts kept drifting back to memories of her father. She remembered how he used to sing off-key during car rides, making her laugh until her sides hurt. She thought about the time he stayed up all night helping her finish a school project, even though neither of them had any idea what they were doing. And then there were the little things, the way he always called her kiddo, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. These moments played over and over in her mind, each one sharper and more vivid than before. At one point, the pastor invited family members to share their favorite memories of James. Maria's older brother went first, recounting a funny story about their father accidentally locking himself out of the house one winter morning. Everyone chuckled softly, the sound breaking the tension in the room. Next, her younger sister spoke, her voice trembling as she talked about how their dad would surprise her with ice cream after tough days at school. Each story painted a picture of a man who was loving, patient, and full of life, a man who would be deeply missed. Finally, it was Maria's turn. She hesitated for a moment, unsure if she could find the words, but then she stood up, gripping the edges of the podium for support. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "My dad was my hero," she said, her voice shaky but clear. He taught me so many things. Not just how to ride a bike or draw pictures, but how to be brave, how to believe in myself, and how to love unconditionally. She paused, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how I'm going to do this without him, but I promise to carry his lessons with me every single day. Her words seemed to resonate with everyone in the room. Several people nodded, wiping away their own tears. When Maria finished speaking, she returned to her seat, feeling both drained and lighter, as if sharing her feelings had lifted a small weight off her shoulders. After the speeches, it was time to approach the coffin. Maria dreaded this moment more than anything else. She watched as others filed past, some lingering longer than others, placing their hands on the polished wood or whispering private goodbyes. When it was finally her turn, she hesitated, her feet rooted to the spot. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her palms grew clammy. This was it, the last time she would see her father. Summoning every ounce of courage, Maria stepped forward. The lid of the coffin was open, revealing her father lying peacefully inside. He looked different. Not quite like himself, but still undeniably him. His hands were folded gently across his chest, and a faint smile graced his lips, as if he were simply sleeping. Maria reached out, touching his hand tentatively. It was cold and stiff, nothing like the warm, strong hands she remembered holding hers. For a long moment, she just stood there, staring at him. Memories flooded her mind, each one pulling at her heartstrings. She wanted to scream, to beg him to wake up, to tell him how much she needed him. But instead, she leaned forward and wrapped her arms around him, hugging him tightly. I love you, Dad, she whispered, her voice breaking. Thank you for everything. As she held him, something extraordinary happened. A warmth spread through her arms, unlike anything she had ever felt before. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, a trick of her grieving mind desperate to hold on to him. But then she felt it again, a faint movement beneath her fingertips. Her father's fingers twitched ever so slightly, as if trying to return her hug. Gasping, Maria pulled back, her eyes wide with shock. Had she imagined it? She stared at his hand, half expecting it to move again. Nothing happened. The room remained silent, everyone else oblivious to what she had just experienced. Heart racing, Maria reached out once more and gently held his hand. This time, there was no mistaking it. The slightest pressure, a weak but undeniable squeeze. It was as if her father was saying goodbye one final time. Tears streamed down her face as she stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Was this real? Was it possible? Or was she losing her grip on reality? No one else noticed. The line of mourners continued moving behind her, paying their respects and leaving flowers. Maria stepped aside, her mind spinning. She couldn't explain what had just happened, and perhaps she never would. But in that moment, she felt closer to her father than she had since his passing. Whatever it was, it gave her a strange sense of peace, a reassurance that even though he was gone, his love for her remained. As she returned to her seat, Maria glanced around the room. People were still talking quietly, sharing stories and comforting one another. To them, it was just another funeral, a sad but ordinary event. But for Maria, it was something far greater, a moment of connection that defied logic and reason. She didn't understand it, but she didn't need to. All she knew was that she would carry this memory with her forever, a reminder that love transcends even death itself. After the funeral, Maria couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at the coffin, the warmth, the faint movement of her father's fingers. It replayed in her mind over and over again like a broken record. She tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination, a desperate attempt by her grieving mind to hold on to him. But no matter how hard she tried to dismiss it, the memory of that moment felt too vivid, too real to ignore. It wasn't just a random twitch or a reflex. It had felt intentional, as if her father was reaching out to her one last time. For days, Maria found herself unable to focus on anything else. She went through the motions of daily life, waking up, eating meals, talking to her family, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the funeral. She replayed every detail in her head, the way his hand had felt beneath hers, the strange warmth that spread through her arms, and the overwhelming sense of peace that followed. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced before. Was it possible for someone who had passed away to respond in such a way? Or had she simply imagined it all? Determined to find answers, Maria began researching online. She spent hours scrolling through articles and forums, reading about near-death experiences, post-mortem phenomena, and even stories of miracles. Some sources mentioned that muscle contractions could occur after death due to residual nerve activity, but none of them explained the warmth or the deliberate sensation she had felt. Others talked about spiritual connections between loved ones, suggesting that emotions and energy could transcend physical boundaries. While these ideas intrigued her, they didn't fully satisfy her need for understanding. One evening, while sitting alone in her room, Maria stumbled upon an article written by a doctor who specialized in end-of-life care. In it, he described rare cases where families reported feeling unexplained warmth or subtle movements from their deceased loved ones during final goodbyes. According to the doctor, science couldn't always explain these occurrences, but many people believed they were signs, a way for the departed to offer comfort or closure. Reading those words sent chills down Maria's spine. Could this be what had happened with her father? Had he somehow managed to communicate with her even in death? The more Maria thought about it, the more she realized that the experience had changed something within her. Before the funeral, she had been consumed by grief, overwhelmed by the idea of living without her father. But now she felt a glimmer of hope. That single moment at the coffin had reassured her in a way nothing else could. It was as if her father had whispered to her, "I'm still here, in my own way." Though she couldn't see him or hear his voice anymore, she felt his presence lingering around her, guiding her forward. As the days turned into weeks, Maria noticed other changes too. Memories of her father seemed sharper, more vivid than ever before. She would catch herself smiling, at random moments recalling little quirks or funny stories about him. Once, while cooking dinner, she remembered how he used to hum old songs while flipping pancakes on Sunday mornings. Another time, she laughed aloud as she pictured him struggling to put together a piece of furniture, muttering under his breath about missing screws. These memories weren't painful. They were comforting, almost as if her father was reminding her of the joy they had shared. Inspired by these feelings, Maria decided to channel her emotions into something creative. For years, her father had encouraged her passion for drawing, often telling her, "You have a gift, kiddo. Don't let it go to waste." Now, she felt compelled to honor his memory by creating something meaningful. She pulled out her sketchbook and began working on a series of illustrations inspired by their relationship. Each drawing captured a specific moment they had shared: a bike ride through the park, a quiet afternoon coloring together, or a hug goodbye at the airport. As she sketched, tears would occasionally blur her vision, but she didn't stop. Every line, every stroke of her pencil felt like a tribute to her father. What started as a personal project soon grew into something bigger. Friends and family noticed the sketches scattered across Maria's desk and asked about them. When she explained the story behind the drawings, they encouraged her to share them with others. At first, Maria hesitated. The idea of putting her grief and her father's memory out into the world felt daunting. But eventually she agreed, posting a few of the illustrations on social media along with short captions describing each memory. To her surprise, the response was overwhelming. People from all over began commenting on her posts, sharing their own stories of loss and connection. Many said her drawings resonated deeply with them, capturing emotions they hadn't been able to express themselves. One woman wrote, "Your art made me cry because it reminded me of my mom. Thank you for helping me remember her in a new light." Another person commented, "I lost my dad last year, and seeing your work gives me hope that love never truly disappears." Encouraged by the positive feedback, Maria continued to create. She poured her heart into each piece, using her art not only to heal herself but also to connect with others who had experienced similar losses. Over time, her small collection of sketches evolved into a larger body of work, a visual diary of her journey through grief and gratitude. But the most profound change came from within Maria herself. Slowly, she began to feel less weighed down by sadness. The sharp edges of her pain softened, replaced by a bittersweet warmth whenever she thought of her father. She still missed him terribly, of course, but she no longer felt as though she had lost him completely. Instead, she carried him with her, in her memories, in her art, and in the lessons he had taught her about kindness, resilience, and love. One day, as she sat finishing a particularly emotional drawing, Maria paused and looked out the window. The sun was setting, casting golden hues across the sky. She smiled softly, remembering something her father used to say. Even when things seem dark, there's always light waiting to break through. In that moment, she understood exactly what he meant. Life might take away the people we love, but it can never erase the impact they leave behind. And sometimes, in the most unexpected ways, they find a way to reach us, to remind us that love is eternal, transcending even the boundaries of life and death. Though Maria still didn't have all the answers, she no longer needed them. What mattered most was the connection she had felt that day at the coffin, a reminder that her father's love was still with her, alive in her heart, and woven into the fabric of her life. That knowledge gave her strength, helping her navigate the difficult path of healing while keeping his memory alive in everything she did. Maria's newfound determination to turn her grief into something meaningful began to shape her days. She spent hours in her small apartment, surrounded by art supplies and photographs of her father. The walls were covered with sketches, some finished, others still in progress. Each piece told a story, capturing moments from their shared life. There was the time they built a birdhouse together, his hand steadying hers as she hammered nails into wood. Another drawing showed him teaching her how to swim, laughing as she splashed water everywhere. These memories weren't just images, on paper. They were fragments of her father's spirit, pieces of him that she could hold on to forever. As her collection grew, so did her confidence. At first, Maria had been hesitant to share her work beyond social media posts. But the overwhelming response she received encouraged her to think bigger. Friends suggested she host an exhibition, a way to showcase her art and honor her father's memory on a larger scale. The idea terrified her at first. What if no one came? What if people didn't understand the emotions behind the drawings? Yet deep down, she knew it was something she needed to do, not just for herself but for everyone who had ever lost someone they loved. Planning the exhibition became her mission. She poured all her energy into preparing, selecting the best pieces and writing heartfelt captions for each one. Every caption included a short anecdote about her father, explaining the significance of the moment depicted in the drawing. For example, next to a sketch of them riding bikes, she wrote, "Dad taught me how to ride without training wheels when I was 5. He ran alongside me until I felt brave enough to pedal on my own. That day, he gave me more than balance. He gave me courage." The process wasn't easy. Some nights she stayed up late tweaking details or reworking compositions. Other times she found herself crying over a particularly emotional memory. But even in those difficult moments, she felt closer to her father. It was as if creating these artworks allowed her to have conversations with him again, revisiting the lessons and laughter they had shared. Finally, the day of the exhibition arrived. Maria woke up early, her nerves buzzing like static electricity. She dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made her feel confident yet comfortable. As she walked into the gallery space where her art would be displayed, she felt a lump rise in her throat. The room looked beautiful. Her drawings hung neatly, on the walls illuminated by soft lighting. Flowers adorned the entrance, and a table near the back held refreshments for visitors. Everything was ready. When the doors opened, a steady stream of people began to arrive. Friends, family members, co-workers, and even strangers filed in, curious, to see what Maria had created. She greeted each guest warmly, though her hands trembled slightly as she shook theirs. To her surprise, many attendees lingered in front of the artwork, reading the captions and studying the drawings closely. Some nodded thoughtfully, while others wiped away tears. A few approached Maria afterward, thanking her for sharing such personal stories. One woman stood out among the crowd. She was older, perhaps in her 60s, with kind eyes and silver hair tied neatly in a bun. After spending some time looking at the drawings, she approached Maria and introduced herself. "I lost my son 10 years ago," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Your art reminded me of him. The little things we used to do together, the laughter we shared. Thank you for helping me remember." Maria's heart swelled with emotion. She hadn't expected her work to resonate so deeply with others, especially those who carried their own heavy losses. Hearing this woman's words reinforced why she had decided to create the exhibition in the first place. It wasn't just about honoring her father, it was about creating a space where people could come together, share their pain, and find solace in knowing they weren't alone. Throughout the evening, similar conversations unfolded. People opened up to Maria, sharing stories of their own loved ones who had passed away. One man talked about his wife, describing how she had always baked cookies during the holidays. Another spoke of his grandfather who had taught him woodworking skills. Each story added depth to the exhibition, transforming it into something far greater than a simple art show. It became a celebration of love, loss, and the enduring connections that bind us to those we've lost. By the end of the night, Maria felt exhausted, but fulfilled. As the last guests left and the gallery emptied, she took a moment to walk through the room alone. Standing in front of her favorite drawing, a depiction of her father hugging her tightly, she smiled softly. This particular piece was inspired by the unforgettable moment at the coffin. Beneath it, she had written, "Even when goodbye feels final, love finds a way to stay." In that quiet moment, Maria reflected on how far she had come since her father's passing. Losing him had shattered her world, leaving her feeling lost and broken. But now, she realized, she had found a new purpose. Through her art, she had not only kept his memory alive but also created something that touched the lives of others. Her father's influence lived on, not just in her heart but in the hearts of everyone who connected with her work. As she turned off the lights and locked the gallery door behind her, Maria felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, and there would still be days when sadness crept in. But she now understood that grief didn't have to define her. Instead, it could inspire her to create, to connect, and to carry forward the love her father had given her. Walking home under the starlit sky, Maria thought about the future. She imagined continuing her artistic journey, perhaps collaborating with organizations that supported grieving families or teaching workshops to help others express their emotions through creativity. Whatever path she chose, she knew her father would be with her every step of the way. His presence might not be physical anymore, but it was undeniable. In the warmth of her memories, the strength of her resolve, and the unbreakable bond they shared. For the first time in a long while, Maria felt hopeful. Life after loss wasn't easy, but it was possible. And with her father's love as her guide, she believed she could face whatever challenges lay ahead. The success of Maria's exhibition gave her a renewed sense of purpose. It wasn't just the positive feedback or the emotional connections she had made with strangers that stayed with her. It was the realization that her father's influence could reach far beyond her own life. Through her art, she had created a bridge between her personal grief and the universal experience of loss. People from all walks of life had come to see her work, and many left saying they felt less alone in their sorrow. For Maria, this was more than validation. It was proof that love endures, even when death separates us. Inspired by the impact of her first exhibition, Maria decided to take her project further. She began working on a new series of illustrations, this time focusing not only on her memories with her father but also on stories shared by others who had attended the show. One woman had told her about her late husband's habit of leaving little notes around the house for her to find. Another man recounted how his mother always sang him a lullaby before bed, no matter how old he got. These stories became the foundation for Maria's next collection, a tribute to the countless ways people carry their loved ones with them. To gather more material, Maria started hosting small gatherings in her community. She invited anyone who wanted to share their experiences of loss and remembrance. At first, these meetings were intimate affairs, held in her living room with just a handful of participants. But as word spread, more people began showing up. Friends, neighbors, even acquaintances from her social media page. Each session was different, yet they all shared a common thread: the need to honor those who had passed while finding comfort in knowing others understood their pain. During one of these gatherings, a young woman named Clara stood up to speak. Her voice quivered as she described losing her younger brother in a car accident. "He was only 19, she said, clutching a photograph tightly in her hands. "I keep expecting him to text me or call me like he used to. Sometimes I hear his laugh in my dreams, and it feels so real." As she spoke, tears streamed down her face, but she didn't stop. "What helps me most is remembering the things he loved, the music he played, the jokes he told. It's like keeping a part of him alive." Maria listened intently, moved by Clara's vulnerability. Afterward, she asked if she could include Clara's story in her upcoming artwork. Clara agreed, adding, "If it helps someone else feel less alone, then yes, please use it." This exchange reinforced Maria's belief that storytelling had the power to heal, not just for the storyteller, but for everyone who heard the tale. As she worked on the new series, Maria noticed something remarkable happening within herself. The act of listening to others' stories and translating them into art helped her process her own grief in ways she hadn't anticipated. She still missed her father deeply, but the sharp ache of loss had softened into a bittersweet longing. She found herself laughing more often, recalling funny moments they had shared without immediately feeling overwhelmed by sadness. Even mundane tasks like cooking dinner or folding laundry reminded her of him in subtle, comforting ways. His presence was no longer a shadow looming over her days. It was a gentle companion, walking beside her. When the second exhibition opened, it was clear that Maria's work had evolved. The gallery buzzed with energy as visitors moved from one piece to the next, reading captions that told stories of love, resilience, and connection. Some drawings depicted joyful moments, like a grandmother teaching her granddaughter how to bake cookies. Others portrayed quieter scenes, such as a father tucking his son into bed. Each image carried its own weight, its own message of hope. One piece, titled "The Last Note," drew particular attention. It showed a woman holding a crumpled piece of paper, tears streaming down her face as she read the words scrawled on it. Beneath the drawing, Maria had written, "After my husband passed away, I found this note tucked inside a book we used to read together. It simply said, 'I love you.' Every time I miss him, I hold on to this reminder that his love will never fade." Visitors paused in front of the artwork, some visibly moved to tears. A few even approached Maria afterward to share how much the piece resonated with them. Among the attendees was a journalist who wrote for a local newspaper. Impressed by both the quality of Maria's work and the emotional depth of the exhibition, she asked if she could interview Maria for an article. Initially hesitant, Maria eventually agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to spread her message to a wider audience. The resulting piece, titled "Art as Healing: How One Woman Turns Grief into Connection," appeared in the weekend edition of the paper. Within days, Maria received messages from readers across the city, and even from other states, thanking her for sharing her journey and inspiring them to confront their own losses. The article marked a turning point for Maria. Offers began pouring in, from schools asking her to give talks about coping with grief, to nonprofits inviting her to collaborate on projects supporting bereaved families. Though she couldn't accept every request, she embraced the ones that aligned with her mission. She started teaching workshops where participants learned to create art inspired by their loved ones, using simple techniques to express complex emotions. Many attendees later told her that the process helped them reconnect with cherished memories and find peace amidst their pain. Despite her growing recognition, Maria remained grounded. She knew her work wasn't about fame or accolades. It was about creating spaces where people could grieve openly and celebrate the lives of those they had lost. Her father's memory continued to guide her, reminding her to approach everything with kindness, humility, and authenticity. Whenever doubt crept in, she thought back to the moment at the coffin, the warmth of his embrace giving her strength to keep going. One evening, after a particularly busy day of teaching and meeting with collaborators, Maria sat alone in her studio. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the overhead light. She picked up a blank sheet of paper and began sketching absent-mindedly. Before long, an image emerged, a girl standing under a tree, looking up at the stars. In the corner of the frame, a figure stood nearby, barely visible, watching over her. Maria smiled softly as she added the finishing touches. This drawing wasn't for any exhibition or commission. It was for herself. Beneath the sketch, she wrote a single sentence. Even when they're gone, they're still here. It was a truth she had come to understand deeply over the past months. Death might separate us physically, but love transcends boundaries, whether through memories, art, or the invisible threads that connect us to those we've lost. The bonds we share endure. Maria realized now that her father hadn't truly left her. He lived on in the lessons he had taught her, the laughter they had shared, and the legacy of kindness and creativity he had instilled in her. As she set the pencil down and leaned back in her chair, Maria felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life after loss wasn't easy, and there were still moments when sadness washed over her like a wave. But she had discovered something invaluable. Healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about remembering in a way that brought light instead of darkness. And through her art, she had found a way to do just that. Looking around her studio, filled with sketches and half-finished projects, Maria felt ready for whatever came next. Her journey was far from over, but she no longer feared the road ahead. With her father's love as her compass, she believed she could navigate anything life threw her way. Months turned into years, and Maria's life continued to evolve in ways she never could have imagined. What had started as a deeply personal project, a way to cope with the loss of her father, had blossomed into something much larger than herself. Her art exhibitions became well-known events, drawing crowds not just from her hometown but from cities across the country. People came not only to admire her work, but also to find solace in the stories it told. Each piece served as a reminder that love transcends death, offering comfort to those who felt weighed down by grief. Maria's journey took her to places she had once thought were out of reach. She traveled to speak at conferences, sharing her experiences with audiences eager to learn how creativity could help heal emotional wounds. Schools invited her to lead workshops for students struggling with loss, while community centers welcomed her to guide families through difficult conversations about saying goodbye. Everywhere she went, people opened their hearts to her, trusting her with their pain because they saw themselves reflected in her story. One of the most transformative moments came when a documentary filmmaker approached Maria about creating a film based on her life and work. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she was ready to share such an intimate part of herself with the world. But after careful consideration and encouragement from her mother, who reminded her of James's pride in her accomplishments, she agreed. The resulting documentary, titled The Last Embrace, followed Maria as she created new pieces, interacted with workshop participants, and revisited significant locations from her childhood. It culminated in a poignant scene where she stood beside her father's grave, speaking directly to him as tears streamed down her face. When the documentary premiered, it received widespread acclaim. Critics praised its raw honesty and emotional depth, calling it a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. For Maria, however, the greatest reward was hearing from viewers who said the film helped them confront their own losses. One letter stood out among the hundreds she received. A teenage boy wrote, "I lost my mom last year and I didn't know how to talk about it. Watching your story made me feel like it's okay to miss her and still keep going. Thank you for showing me that. This feedback reinforced why Maria had chosen this path in the first place. Her mission wasn't just to create art. It was to build connections, to remind people that they weren't alone in their struggles. Every tear shed in response to her work, every heartfelt message sent to her inbox, was proof that her father's legacy lived on through her efforts. As her career flourished, Maria also found joy in unexpected areas of her life. She reconnected with old friends, many of whom marveled at how far she had come since those early days of overwhelming grief. They often joked that her dad vibes were stronger than ever, pointing out how his humor, patience, and kindness seemed to shine through everything she did. Even strangers began recognizing her in public, stopping her to express gratitude or simply share a kind word. Though fame wasn't something she sought, she appreciated the opportunity to spread positivity wherever she went. Amid all the growth and success, Maria remained deeply connected to her roots. She visited her family regularly, cherishing the time spent with her mother and siblings. Together they laughed over old memories of James, the way he'd burn toast during breakfast or insist on dancing at weddings despite having 2 left feet. These moments brought both laughter and tears, but they always ended with a sense of warmth and unity. Maria realized that keeping her father's memory alive wasn't just about grand gestures or public recognition. It was also about the quiet, everyday acts of remembrance that kept him close to their hearts. On the 5th anniversary of her father's passing, Maria organized a special event to honor his life. Held in the same park where they used to take long walks together, the gathering brought together friends, family, and fans of her work. Tables were set up with easels and art supplies, inviting attendees to create their own tributes to loved ones they had lost. Children painted colorful pictures, while adults sketched portraits or wrote letters to those no longer with them. The atmosphere was one of celebration rather than mourning, filled with laughter, music, and shared stories. At the center of the event stood a large canvas, blank except for a single sentence written in bold letters: "Love lives on." Throughout the day, visitors added their contributions to the mural, drawings, words, fingerprints, all blending together into a vibrant tapestry of connection. Maria watched as people poured their emotions onto the canvas, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her father's influence had inspired such a powerful display of collective healing. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the park, Maria addressed the crowd. Holding back tears, she spoke from the heart. "My dad taught me so many things, not just how to ride a bike or draw pictures, but how to love fully and live bravely. He may not be here physically, but his presence is everywhere, in the wind rustling through these trees, in the laughter of children playing nearby, and in every person who chooses to honor their loved ones by remembering them with love instead of sorrow." Her voice cracked slightly as she concluded, "If there's one thing I've learned, it's that death doesn't end relationships. It changes them, yes, but it can't break the bonds we share. So today, let's celebrate not just my dad, but everyone we've lost. Let's carry their love forward, letting it guide us as we move through life." Applause erupted around her, echoing through the park like a chorus of gratitude. As Maria stepped away from the microphone, she felt a profound sense of peace. In that moment, surrounded by people united by love and memory, she knew she had fulfilled her purpose. Her father's legacy wasn't confined to a single drawing or exhibition. It was alive in every person who had been touched by her work. In the years that followed, Maria continued to create, teach, and inspire. Her art evolved, reflecting the changing seasons of her life. Some pieces were joyful, bursting with color and energy, while others were subdued, capturing the quiet beauty of reflection. Through it all, her father remained her muse, guiding her with the lessons he had taught her and the love he had given her. Though she never stopped missing him, Maria came to understand that grief wasn't something to overcome. It was something to embrace. It was a testament to the depth of her love, a reminder that even in absence, connection remains. And whenever doubt crept in, she returned to the memory of that extraordinary moment at the coffin, the warmth of his embrace giving her strength to keep moving forward. Life, Maria realized, was a series of goodbyes and hellos. People entered and exited our lives, leaving behind traces of themselves in the form of memories, lessons, and love. While some farewells were harder than others, they didn't diminish the impact those individuals had on us. Instead, they became threads woven into the fabric of who we are, shaping us into stronger, kinder versions of ourselves. Standing in her studio one evening, surrounded by sketches and unfinished projects, Maria smiled softly. She glanced at a framed photograph of her father sitting on the desk, a younger version of him grinning broadly, his arms wrapped tightly around a little girl with pigtails. Picking it up, she whispered, "Thank you, Dad. You're still here, in everything I do." Setting the photo back down, she picked up her pencil and began sketching. Outside, the stars twinkled brightly in the night sky, their light reaching across vast distances to illuminate the earth below. Just like her father's, love, Maria thought, reaching her wherever she went, reminding her that some connections are eternal.